So as Katie mentioned, I'll get started with a presentation in just a minute. I wanted to take a couple moments before that just to introduce myself and run through my connection and history at Landmark. So Landmark has been here since 1971. So we're in our and beyond now our 50th. And of course, COVID put a little kink in having a big celebration for our 50th. So I'm hoping to do more of that next year. But I've been here for 26 years. I worked for a number of years at the high school campus as a teacher, academic advisor. My background is in speech and language and special education. So I worked with students who have some expressive language needs, which we'll talk about during the presentation today. And I've been in the admission office since 2006. So I've been doing this role for a number of years now. So not only am I, been connected for a long time professionally, but on a personal note, I have 2 kids myself. My daughter's going to be entering her junior year in high school in the fall, and both my kids are dyslexic. My daughter had done a number of summer programs here at Landmark, and she's doing really well back at her public school. And my son is currently attending Landmark as a 7th grader. And also did a couple summer programs before starting here full-time for the school year. So I'm also involved as a parent, and I'm happy to answer any questions along the way, along with, again, the other administrators that will join the call later on. So just know that there are many folks that have been at Landmark for a long time, lots of married couples and families involved, and people who have really dedicated their lives to working here because of what an amazing place this is to be. The students are incredible. The progress they make is really amazing. And it's just a really rewarding community and environment to get to be a part of all of this. So just wanted to say all of that. And then what we're going to do now is start with the presentation. So just give me a minute to get that up and running. Present this.
So again, you should see a little push pin icon. If you scroll to the center of the screen, that will ensure that Melody's presentation takes up the entirety of your screen. Again, feel free to turn your camera on and off, whatever you're comfortable with, but I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And again, thank you for taking the time.
And it's all set, Katie. Can you see everything okay?
It looks great. Yep.
Perfect. Okay. So what we're going to start with first today is talking about who the students are at Landmark School. We do work with a very specific population of student here, a very specific profile. And before we get into the kind of the diagnoses piece and that part, I want to mention that our students come to Landmark with so much potential. They're really, really bright students, college bound, if that's what they choose to do. And the large majority do go off to post-secondary. Their kids are really eager to learn. They want to be in an environment where school makes sense to them. They want to be taught in a way that again, makes sense, where they can access the curriculum and feel good about what they're learning and make sense of it all. And they really are well-adjusted students. They may have had some past school struggles. They may have some anxiety because of that, but it's really primarily due to the learning challenges. And overall, they are really well-adjusted students. They, are social. They relate well to same-age peers. They have friends. And the other thing to know about our students is that they are really resilient. Again, because of these past struggles in school, you would think a lot of these kids have really shut down and given up, but they've really pushed through the challenges that they've had, and they're really positive about the idea of finally being in an environment where other students learn like them and getting the right support that they need. They're really motivated and capable kids. So in terms of the actual profile, we at Landmark talk about this language-based learning disability profile as kind of an umbrella term. And there's a number of possible specific labels or diagnoses that are oftentimes seen in the private neuropsych testing or the public school psychoeducational evaluations that fall within this umbrella. So the dyslexia piece, I'd say, is about 75% of our students at the high school that present with kind of a classic reading disability. They struggle with the phonological awareness for word attack and decoding and reading fluency skills. That also affects the encoding spelling piece, of course. Sometimes we'll have students that come to Landmark that maybe are not classically dyslexic. They may read okay, but they may have a disorder of written language where they're really struggling to get their thoughts down on paper in a clear, concise, and organized way. So that is also a common struggle for our students. In terms of the language disorder piece, we have students here that really struggle with word retrieval and expressive output. They may have a diagnosed mixed receptive expressive language disorder or just an expressive language disorder. But one distinction that's important to make here in terms of who we're able to support well at Landmark is that we do need for the students to have solid, intact, average to above receptive comprehension of language. So they really understand the information coming in, but for a lot of our students, again, to retrieve and output, whether with oral expression or in written format, is difficult. And then in terms of the executive function piece, that's a very commonly used buzzword nowadays. And in terms of looking at a language-based LD population, pretty much all of our students struggle with some aspect of executive functioning skills. When we talk about executive function, we're talking about that ability to plan and organize. We're talking about having effective study skill strategies in place, how to deal with a long-term assignment, a cumulative test, or a research paper they might have to write, and knowing how to micro-unit and break things down into manageable parts and chunks. How to initiate tasks with getting started with homework, and again, managing their time effectively through completing that. So those are all the different executive function skills where our students may struggle, and we're teaching directly to that, kind of across curriculum. And I'll talk more about that later on, but a lot of our kids we'll see have executive function disorder. And then with that, oftentimes is ADHD as well. Probably about half of our students or more have a secondary ADHD diagnosis, more of the inattentive type, where they just may need some refocusing in class. But that really needs to be, again, kind of a secondary or comorbid diagnosis. And we do want to see that primarily they're struggling with the language-based learning disability. And then in terms of the working memory and or processing speed, this is where we often see a discrepancy cognitively with our students. And I want to talk about that in this next slide. So I mentioned at the very beginning that our students are bright. They really are very capable. They have really good, what we call fluid reasoning ability. They're able to, when you take language away, really reason and problem solve and get the big picture of things. Our kids do really well with the visual spatial integration. We're very visually based in the way we teach. So we need for the students to benefit from the visual modalities that we use. And again, we know for our students, that's a strength for them. Also, in terms of that verbal comprehension, I mentioned that receptive, like understanding the language coming in, is solid for our kiddos. Again, they may struggle with the retrieval and output, but they can comprehend the verbal information. So when we have a family apply to Landmark, we are asking for testing within 3 years of date of application. And part of that testing that we require is the WISC, which is the Wessler Intelligence Scale for Children. If a student is 16 or older, they may have the WACE, which is just the adult version of that test. And again, what we're looking for is that comprehension, reasoning, and visual spatial ability to be the main areas of strength. If that's a struggle for a student, then they're really going to struggle to access the curriculum here and make effective progress. And then where we often see that discrepancy tied to that previous slide that I mentioned is with that working memory and or processing speed. So when we talk about working memory, we're talking about that ability to hold on to a lot of information at once that someone has to then do something with that information. We know for our kiddos that breaking things down into single and two and maybe three-step directions at most is how they do best, rather than rambling off a ton of information at once and them getting overloaded with how much they have to hold on to. It's really important, again, for our students to tie information that's being presented to something visual as well, because those visual modalities, that's how our students hold on to information best. The processing speed really has to do with that motoric and visual processing piece, how quickly students can output and how quickly they can visually scan and process information. And again, that may be a relative area of weakness based on those other cognitive strengths for our students. So let me just take 1 minute before we move on to the next slide to say that when you're applying to Landmark, we do work on a rolling basis. There's no application deadline, whether you're applying for summer program and or school year. It's one application. You'll see there's a checkbox to indicate one or the other or both if you're applying for both. And then there is a checklist included with the application outlining all of the information that we need to receive. Again, this testing, in addition to the cognitive testing, we need a measure of academic achievement testing, something that looks at levels of reading, writing, and math. We need a measure of what we call psychosocial adjustment, which are rating scales like the BASC or the Child Behavior Checklist, where we're getting an understanding of the student's social skills and levels of, any possible anxiety, depression, and levels of attention. So we do need that as well. And then in addition to that, we're getting things like school report cards and IEP or IEP progress reports, if there is one, or a 504 plan, if there's one of those. We're getting teacher references. So there are a number of application materials that we need to collect. And the reason we ask for so much information is that we really want to ensure that we are going to be the right fit. We do work with this very narrow piece of the pie. This is our profile, these bright, well-adjusted students who struggle with aspects of reading, writing, listening, and speaking. We're not a therapeutic program. We're not equipped to support students whose primary diagnosis or needs is more around the social emotional realm. We would really fall short in providing appropriate supports to those kids. For example, also if a student maybe has an ASD diagnosis, which is autism spectrum disorder, we may not be the best fit because those students really learn differently than the way we teach here. So it is very important that we ensure that when we take a student, we're setting them up for success. That's our profile. And again, questions after I get through the PowerPoint, you're welcome to ask any questions about profile if you have any. What we're going to do now is jump into talking about our specific day-to-day, what's really unique about Landmark High School, what makes for a good language-based program, and our different programs offered at the high school. So one of the most important parts of who we are and what we do here as a school at both campuses, at the lower elementary middle school campus, which is a few miles down the road, grades 2 through 8, and at our high school campus, grades 9 through 12, is that every student at Landmark receives a daily one-to-one language-based tutorial as one of their 50-minute classes. It happens every day. Just like going to a small group math class, English language arts class, history class, science class, they will also have a one-to-one tutorial. It's not before or after school. It's not extra help. It's not what families might think of as academic support where a teacher's there helping a kiddo with their science homework. That's not what the tutorial is. The tutorial is specifically designed to remediate language and literacy skills. And that may look a little bit different for each student here on campus, depending upon what their area of need is around the language and the literacy. It's based off an individualized curriculum of, it's a diagnostic of goals. We may have a student that needs to spend a lot of time on decoding and reading fluency. We may have a student whose primary focus in the tutorial, some of the higher level inferential reading comprehension strategies, writing skills, and study skills. So it's really going to be individualized based off a diagnostic of goals. For about 80 to 90 of the 300 students that we have at the high school, and we usually have anywhere from 290 to 310 students attending at the high school, usually about 80 or so are identified coming into Landmark as having pretty significant gaps still in their basic phonological awareness, again, with that word attack piece for the decoding and encoding and reading fluency. And so those students would be placed in a very specific type of tutorial that we refer to as an early literacy tutorial. In this tutorial, students are utilizing a lot of the Linda Mood Bell LIPS program. If you've heard of things like Wilson or OG or Gillingham, these are all phonetic-based programs towards teaching reading. What we like a lot about LIPS, and we use some Seeing Stars and some other programs as well, we certainly bring in elements of Wilson. What we like about the LIPS is that we find it's the most multisensory of all those phonetic-based programs. Kids are using a lot of manipulatives with felts and blocks. There's a lot of what we call oral motor feedback, what's happening with their mouths, and feeling how they're producing the sounds. And it really helps them to hold on to the sequencing of sounds to then improve decoding, encoding, and fluency. That said, we don't believe in having just one tool in the toolbox. Not one program works best for everyone. So we really want to make sure that we're customizing the student's program to bring in resources and materials that are going to work best for them. And that, we bring in some Read Naturally and Great Leaps for Fluency work. There's all kinds of different Landmark teacher-generated materials that we're using. But again, the focus of this one-to-one tutorial is to close the gaps with the reading skills and to improve the written expression as well and the language production skills. Another thing that's really unique about who we are and what we do is how we group students in classrooms and the sizes of our classrooms. So the average size of our classrooms at Landmark are 6 to 8 students. We actually can't go beyond 8. We're an approved program by the state, and about half of our students are funded. And so 8 is the max for our classroom size. There is one exception to that, which I'll talk about in a minute. But for the largest majority of the students at Landmark, they're in either our traditional Founders Program or our Expressive Language Program. Again, I'm going to talk about that in more detail. And the class sizes are 8 max. Sometimes they're as small as 4. When we group students in classes, we're placing them by their ability level. So it's different from other schools in terms of the enrollment process. Oftentimes in our admission office, we'll get calls from families asking if a specific grade is full. For example, is our 10th grade sophomore class full, that type of thing. And that's actually not how we admit students to the school. We admit students until our total number is full or until all of our tutorial teaching periods are full. We're not taking, the 18, 19-year-old seniors and putting them with the 14-year-old freshmen, but grade up, grade down, it's more important for us to have students at the same skill level, working at the same pace, grouped together, versus worrying about that they all happen to be in 9th grade. If you think about the goal of English language arts being grammar and written composition, it doesn't make sense to take a student who's struggling with basic sentence and paragraph structure and put them with someone who's writing multi-paragraph or multi-page essays just because they're in the same grade, the same age. If we really try to make the groups more homogeneous and tight-knit in terms of their skill sets, it allows for the teacher to really gauge the pace appropriately, to assign the appropriate amount of homework every night, knowing that these 6 to 8 students can handle this much independent work in this specific given amount of time. So that's how we're placing students. The classes are 50 minutes each. It's the same set schedule every day. We start at 7:50 in the morning. We finish at 3:15 in the afternoon. And And we are paralleling the mass curriculum framework. So in terms of the content classes that students take here at the high school, same classes that they would have at any public high school, the bio and chem, the US and world history, the algebra and geometry, algebra 2. So students are working through the mass curriculum frameworks. It's just that the delivery of instruction is quite different, with small class size and things being very multisensory, multimodal instruction, very visually based and hands-on. All of our classes here are taught by teachers who either currently have a master's in special education or teachers who are currently working towards that. They might be on a waiver with the DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. They're enrolled taking courses, being directly supervised and working towards getting that degree. But about 70% of our high school faculty already have that upper level master's degree certification in mild to moderate special needs. So in terms of our approach and what makes for a really good language-based program, it's important to note that consistency across curriculum is so important. We want the instruction to be direct and skill-based. What that means is that, of course, students are still learning, biology terms, and they're learning, stuff that happened in U.S. history, but they're doing that in class with the teacher teaching the content through study skills. So how are you effectively previewing relevant vocabulary? How are you taking good 2-column notes with main ideas and details, test-taking strategies, organizing your notes for, a paper that you might need to write, or how you conduct research. And it's consistent across curriculum. We don't want one teacher teaching, the skills for, let's say, writing a paper one way and another teacher teaching it a different way. The goal is that these skills become internalized and more automatic, and then we can start to remove the structure, and the students are really able to implement this stuff more independently. And again, the way for that to work is for it to be consistent across curriculum. We do have 3 distinct programs at our high school campus. Excuse me. And I want to take a minute to mention that our high school is a college preparatory high school as a whole. What program a student goes into when they start here at Landmark has nothing to do with how smart they are or whether they are college bound, because all of our students are college bound. The program that a student starts out in here at Landmark, and there can be movement during their years here as they make progress and gain skills, but whatever program they start in just has to do with the skill sets that a student has or doesn't have in place when they join us. So let me start off with the Founders Program, which is the largest of the 3 programs at the high school. The largest majority of our students are placed in our traditional, we call it the Founders Program because it's the program that Landmark was founded on back in '71. So what the daily schedule looks like for the students in the Founders Program is that they will have 6 academic classes in their day. They will have an elective, something fun that they want to take. And don't worry, for all the students joining in today, I will talk about all of that fun stuff soon, I promise. We're kind of getting through all of the academic stuff first, but we will talk about all of the amazing extracurriculars that we have here at Landmark High School in just a bit. But for the students in the Founders Program, they're having that small group math, science, social studies, English language arts class, which focuses again on written expression. Everybody in the Founders Program has that daily one-to-one language-based tutorial, again, that's customized to remediate language and literacy skills. And then their 6th academic in the day is decided upon by us here in the admission office as we look at independent testing and when we administer our own screening battery, which is part of the application process towards the end. we will look at all of that information to figure out and to help determine program placement and class placement. And so for these students in the Founders Program, they may need an extra small group reading fluency class if their literacy skills are still pretty far behind. If they don't need the extra reading class, then they may be placed in a study skills class or a literature class. So those are the options there. For students in our expressive language program, which is the second program at the high school, their daily schedule pretty much mirrors the students in the Founders Program. It's very close. The one main difference here is, if you can see at the bottom of that bulleted list of the 6 classes, these students have identified difficulties with word retrieval and expressive language. They may have a diagnosis of an expressive language disorder, or it's talked about in an evaluation, or it might be noted from parents and during the screening when we administer that. So these students would go into a specific oral expression class where they are working on those word retrieval strategies. They're working on vocabulary, synonym, antonym development, understanding of figurative language, multiple meanings, idioms, how to sequence their ideas and thoughts in a more clear, concise way, how to expand what they want to say and add more detail. So that's the oral expression class. And again, it's designed specifically for students who need to be in the expressive language program because they struggle with that part of their learning profile. Other than that, the classes are the same as the Founders. The third program at our high school is called our prep program. This program is the smallest at our high school, usually around 40 students that are enrolled in our prep program full-time. And these students have been identified as either not being classically dyslexic, or possibly they are dyslexic, but they've had a good amount of remediation already in their educational history, and they are now, or always have been, pretty much reading at grade level. They do not require, these are the only students at Landmark that do not get that daily one-to-one language and literacy tutorial because they no longer require that level of remediation. They are able to decode and read fluently. These students are also able to put together a good at least 2 to 3 paragraph essay. They have a good sense of basic paragraph structure. So we talk about the pace, volume, and complexity increasing for the kiddos in the prep program because they can do more independent reading and writing. Their classes, they still have the math and science, and the math and science is integrated with everybody. So there's no separate prep math and science. There's no separate expressive language math and science. We group students in the math and science classes based on their skill levels. There are, slower paced classes for a student that may struggle in math, and there are higher level, faster paced classes for students who are math whizzes getting through advanced calc by senior year. There's a range of math and science classes. So everybody comes together for that. But for the students in the prep program, they would have a separate social studies class. They have a grammar and composition class for their English language arts, and then they take a specific literature class and a study skills class. So they do have the 6 classes in their day, but again, they are not getting that one-to-one tutorial because they do not require the literacy remediation. On a given year, we may have anywhere close to 20 to 30 students doing some type of combination of programming. We might have a student that's taking a prep level study skills or social studies class, but they may still need the tutorial and the Founders Language Arts class. So the other thing to know is that the prep program is the only part of Landmark High School that is not what we call Chapter 766 approved, meaning we cannot have funded students in the prep. If a student's receiving funding, they would need to be in the traditional Founders program or expressive language. And so, again, when you apply to Landmark, you just apply to Landmark High School as a whole, and then we determine which program is going to be the best placement. For the kids in the prep, their primary diagnosis may be more with the disorder of written expression, executive function, the working memory processing speed, those types of things. Study skills I've kind of already mentioned, but just to review and spiral back, study skills is embedded in everything that we do across curriculum. If you look at this list of executive function skills, the note-taking, the previewing relevant vocab, the test-taking strategies and knowing how to paraphrase relevant information and, write research papers and all of that, and knowing that writing process of how to go from a brainstorm to an outline to a rough draft to an edit to a final draft. All of that is really important that we teach those skills explicitly. And again, it's done across curriculum. Whether a student has a specific study skills class in their schedule on a given year or not, they are still gaining study skills across everything that they're doing here at Landmark. Another thing that's really unique about Landmark School is this role of the academic advisor. This is different from guidance counselors. We have those folks, different from regular, school counselors, social workers that we may have on campus if a student's having a bad day. We have those folks as well. But the role of the academic advisor is to oversee the student's schedule. We customize their schedule every year, and that academic advisor is making sure that in each subject area, the classes are meeting exactly where the student's skill sets are with the right level of challenge. The academic advisor works very closely with the one-to-one tutorial teacher to develop that diagnostic of goals at the beginning of the year. They go in regularly to observe and monitor progress and adjust goals as needed. So they're also the direct supervisor for the one-to-one tutors that are teaching the students in that academic advisor's caseload. They typically have a caseload of around 18 students. They also teach a couple periods a day as well. For any students in their caseload that are funded, they would be writing the IEP. And they're also the main contact person for that student and for the parent or parents or guardians to check in with. If a student is here for the first month of school and they feel like maybe they're in a class that's too easy or too hard, they're questioning their placement, they can go talk to their academic advisor about that. If they're a day student and they're commuting and they get to school one day and realize, oh my goodness, I left my entire homework binder at home, they can go find their advisor about that. And again, for the parent, it's the main contact and check-in person on how things are going in classes, the progress that the student is making, recommendations year to year in terms of what they're recommending for the next school year. So that's the main contact. And it's a nice relationship that's formed between the student and the advisor because the advisor sticks with the student during their years at Landmark. It's not a new person every year. In terms of our guidance and transition office, they're absolutely amazing. They start working with the kids as early as 9th grade, doing interest inventories and having, different meetings with them. But starting junior year is when the student is assigned to a specific guidance counselor and will have regular weekly meetings to really hone in on and identify, what they might want to pursue as their area of passion, what size school, location, level of support they may need or not need as they transition out of Landmark. So it's really personalized support throughout the entire process, requesting applications, helping them get their letters of recommendation, work on their college essay, all of those things. 100% of our students who apply, and it's usually 94 to 96%, they get accepted, and those kids are attending. And, once in a while we'll have a student that wants to do a gap year or go into the military or pursue a specific trade. But the large majority of our students are going off to post-secondary placements. And then the last academic piece I want to talk about, and then, like I said, we'll jump into talking about all the fun stuff, is the homework at Landmark. So homework is assigned every night. Typically for our underclassmen, freshmen, sophomore, it's about an hour and a half total. It does jump up a little bit more as students enter junior, senior year as upperclassmen, but it's always really manageable. It's always a direct practice and review of exactly the skills and content that are introduced in class. We want students to feel like the information is fresh in their minds, that they can sit down at night and do their homework independently. It's not a source of frustration. Again, it's typically about 20 minutes per subject. And because we're grouping students in classes that are, with other students moving at the same pace as them, again, the teacher is able to really know how much homework to assign that this group of, 5 or 6 or 7 students can do in this amount of time. It does count as a big chunk of the grading at Landmark. It's a third of the grade. It is really important for students to get it done and turned in on time. If they're not completing their homework, they would go after school to homework makeup, which is a structured time after school that's being supervised to help them get caught up on the assignments that they miss. So that's the academic piece. Again, the school day runs from 7:50 to 3:15, same set schedule every day. If a student has math first period, that's what they're going to have Monday through Friday all year first period. It doesn't change. What I'd like to do now is to jump into what happens here after school, spend some time talking about our amazing residential boarding program, the residential curriculum. Know that if you're applying to Landmark as a day student, we highly, highly recommend and encourage you stay after school. You do activities. I would say over 95% of our day students are staying. It's the best way to feel a part of the community. You can really be on campus as much as you want. Day students can be here for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. A lot of the day students that are doing sports or art or theater, like whatever they're doing after school, a lot of them will stay through supper and wait to head home until after rush hour traffic dies down. Again, they can really be on campus as much as they want. For the students who live here, and if you have a child that's, a good 45 minutes, hour and 15 minutes away, I highly recommend that you consider the boarding option at Landmark. It really is a wonderful program that promotes effective executive function life skills. So time management, organization, self-advocacy, healthy decision-making. These are all of the things that tie into this level system that we work on or work off of as students live in residence at Landmark. Every new student coming into our program would start off at level 1, whether they're coming in for 9th or 10th grade, or even if they're coming to us new for a senior year, which happens from time to time. They would start off at level 1. Level 1 is more structured. There's more reminders, check out in the morning for breakfast, 10 o'clock lights out at night. They're sitting at their desks with their door open during structured study hall in the evening, and so forth. Every couple weeks, as a student meets the day-to-day expectations and they're on time for things and they're getting their homework done, they can request to move up to the next level. And as they move up levels, they gain privileges, and life becomes a little more fun living here at Landmark at those upper levels. I'll give an example that by the Thanksgiving break in November, if a student has really been responsible and on time and getting their homework done and taking care of the day-to-day expectations, that student could be up to level 5 already, and there's only 6 levels total. Level 5, they can have a fridge and TV in their room. They can have a gaming system. They can order out from local restaurants for food to be delivered. They get a later bedtime. They can shut their door during study hall and be on their bed if they want. They check themselves out in the morning. So there's a bunch of privileges that the students earn. But again, at those upper levels, there's responsibility that comes with that. At level 6, they have to apply for level 6. They have to do a certain amount of community service hours. They have to get letters of recommendation. They kind of structure their own time at level 6. So the students really have to prove themselves to be very mature, responsible members of the community. The way the routine works after school is that students would go back to their houses, change out of dress code. We do have a dress code during the school day at Landmark where students have to wear collared shirts, tucked in, khaki type pants. But after school gets out at 3:15, they can go back, change into athletic gear or casual clothes, whatever they want. they would, for the kids who live here, be required to participate in an afternoon activity. That can be a sport, it can be something else, and I'm going to run through all the options in just a minute. That would, whatever they're doing for their activity, would take them until dinner time. After supper is an hour of free time every night from 6:30 to 7:30. Students can be working out in the weight room, shooting hoops in the gym. They can be watching a movie or TV, playing video games. That's their time to hang out with friends. And then after the free time is when we have structured study hall every night. So 8 to 9:30 is when they're doing their homework. And then after study hall ends, they have to stay in their dorm, but they have a little bit more downtime to relax and hang out before their lights out. And again, that depends on what level they are at. So that's how the residential curriculum works with the level system. What I'd love to do is talk about all of the amazing elective choices and after-school activity options that we have. And most of these things that I'm going to talk about right now, again, these are options for an elective during the school day, and they're also options as after-school afternoon activities. So in our amazing visual arts department, we have all kinds of 2D, 3D media art, drawing, painting, ceramics, printmaking, digital art. We have photography. Again, those are options for classes during the day, or they can be up in the art building after school. The performing arts, there's chorus elective, dance elective, drama elective, theater tech, where kids are doing lighting and sound, building sets. We have kids doing costume design. We have kids taking music lessons after school, doing dance after school. So those are, we have our fall and winter play productions. We do a spring musical every year. So there's a lot going on with the performing arts department. In terms of our wonderful athletic programs, we have 3 seasons of JV and varsity sports. We compete with other private schools in our area as part of a league. And we have in the fall, soccer, cross country, golf, and girls volleyball. In the winter, we have swim team, wrestling, basketball, and indoor track. We also, during the winter months, will go to local mountains on Saturdays for skiing and snowboarding, just for recreation, for fun. In the spring for our sports, we have baseball, softball. We have tennis, lacrosse, outdoor track, and we have sailing. So there's a lot to choose from with our athletic programs that are really wonderful. We also have a working auto shop on campus where kids can take auto mechanics, again, as their elective during the school day or after school. We have woodworking shop on campus where kids can do independent woodworking projects, or there's boat building as an elective to take. There's also an amazing STEAMworks lab where there's all kinds of technology, programming, robotics, film production, animation, all kinds of cool STEAMworks options and technology options for them to get involved with as well. And then the community service that happens here at Landmark is pretty amazing. Kids are putting in thousands of hours every year of community service. We have service trips that we do, tons and tons of opportunities to get involved, and those can also be afternoon activity options for the students here. So that kind of wraps up our academic year information. And what I want to talk about quickly now, just for the next few minutes, is our summer program. We have this amazing, wonderful 4-week summer program during the month of July. Typically, our summer program is both day and boarding. I do want to just make a note that for this summer only, it's going to be a day program. We will not have a boarding component, only because of COVID and needing to get ready to welcome our boarding students back on campus in the fall. We're very proud of the fact that we've been fully in person for our day students since last August, since school opened through this pandemic. But our boarding program was on pause this year. We did have a number of boarding students joining us remotely throughout the year, but we will be 100% back full swing for the 21-22 school year. So we need to get ready for that. So the summer program is going to be a day program only this year for students entering grades 8 through 12. So a little bit different from the academic year where it's students in grades 9 through 12. There are 4 classes that are an hour each that students take during the summertime. They have that one-to-one tutorial. They have an English language arts class, a math class, and then their 4th class would be either an extra reading class if that's what they need, or if they don't need the extra reading class, they would have a study skills class. Then there's lunch, and then there's an afternoon structured study hall because there is some homework over the summer. It's not as much as the school year, but there's some work to do. Students can decide to just do the half-day academic program with us if they would like, or they can decide to stay for an afternoon extended day, which runs Monday through Thursday from 2:30 to 4:30, and join in with one of the 5 wonderful activity options that we have. So there's a marine science program going on. We have a sea kayaking and paddleboarding option. We have a visual arts option. We have a digital photography option, and then we have a health and fitness option. A lot of the student athletes like to do that and get going with some fitness training prior to their fall sport. So that's how our summer program is run. This summer we'll have about 40 plus students, and a handful, well, more than a handful, probably about 10 or so of those students will be new in the fall, and they're using the summer program as a way to transition in. So it's a great way to get going with skills, writing skills, study skills, and it's a really wonderful summer program. And I think I got through everything just in time, and I'm going to exit out of this presentation, and I think we have some administrators that will be joining us momentarily, so let me just stop presenting here. Okay. Katie, I don't know if you'd like to introduce a few folks at this point. Great.
Absolutely. So we'll shift gears now, and for the next half hour, we'll be meeting with some of the Landmark community. So we'll start with our administrators, and then in about 10 minutes, we'll have a few students join as well. So I want to start by introducing Bob Bruto. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Katie. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bob Bruto. I'm head of school here at Landmark. I could add nothing factually given what Mel just went through. So thank you, Mel, for all that information. I have been very fortunate to have been with Landmark since we opened our doors in 1971 with 40 kids up on the hill and seen it grow into what it is today. And what I can say with confidence is that since the day we opened, Landmark has been a diagnostic prescriptive program, trying to figure out through diagnosis, where is a child's learning style? What are the strengths? What are the challenges socially, emotionally, academically, and then prescribing a program for that student. So everybody at Landmark has an individualized, customized program that meets every student exactly where they are in the learning process and can help them move through that process as quickly as possible, as well as finding out what their interests are, whether it's sports or art or theater or whatever it may be. And one of the things that I want to leave you with is the investment here is so deep. And this year has proven that like no other year. The faculty, the staff, the administration have done every conceivable thing they can to engage the students here during the course of this year. And these kids are so happy to be here. The first day they rolled up the hill at the end of August and jumped out of their cars, I got emotional, and I've been here 50 years. They were just high-fiving and happy to be in school. Right to yesterday, the spirit in the senior class right now is through the roof. The baseball game, we beat Concord 6-0. Lacrosse beat Concord in overtime by a goal. And the spirit is the point. These kids are so resilient. They're so happy to be here, and they're learning so much, and they're all going off to great places next year. So I want to say it's a community that is so deeply invested for one reason. It's for the kids. Everything that gets done is for the kids. So it's an exciting place to be, and I'm available anytime if you have questions after this meeting. And please ask all your questions to anybody who's on the screen or at another time. So thank you, Katie, and I'm here to answer questions if they come up.
Thanks for joining, Bob. Next, I'll introduce Bill Barrett, the head of the high school campus.
Good morning, everyone. Great to have you here. Unlike Bob, I was not at Landmark School in 1971 when we opened our doors, but I have been at Landmark for 25 years, and this is my 6th year as head of the high school. And I think it's worth mentioning that many of the members of our administrative team, some of whom are here today, I think the average tenure is about 20 years at Landmark School. We all teach, we all have deep roots in the community. I started out here as a full-time teacher, a coach. I lived in the dorm. I met my wife here. She's been here for 25 years. She's a department head. So as I think, as we answer your questions, realize that I think that we've been here a long time, and the connections to the student community, the faculty community, the parent community are very deep. And thank you for being here and for exploring Landmark School. We're excited to have you.
Thanks, Bill. John Furyk, would you like to say good morning?
Of course. Good morning. I think I also hit the 20-year mark at some point. I arrived at Landmark School in 1996 as a language arts teacher, worked in our residential program as a house parent, worked for 9 years as our public school liaison at the high school campus. Currently, I'm the interim academic dean at the high school. Loving what I do. As Bob said, the spirit's through the roof this year. The weather's getting nice. It's just been a great place to be, and we're excited to see you all and talk about the program. So it's nice to be here, and thanks for being here.
And then we also have Jeff Fossey. Good morning, Jeff.
Hey, everybody. Rounding out my 17th year here at Landmark, so I think that perhaps makes me the baby of the crew here on the admin team this morning. I work within student life. I'm an assistant dean of students. I'm also the summer program director in the summer ahead. So really, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about after-school programming, living in the dorms, certainly the summer program. If you have a son or daughter attending that program coming up, we're thinking about it for future summers. And then I would echo the sentiments that have already been stated. It's been a really successful year, and we're eager, to round it out exactly in that way. So graduation coming up has meant spirits on campus are really strong. Having a successful sports season in the spring has meant a lot to the students. And I think that echoes a lot of what has already been implied, that ultimately we operate with a student-first approach. And I think that we will keep that for the year ahead. So thanks for being here, and please let me know if I can answer any questions.
Thank you, administrators. We appreciate you taking the time. Oh, I'm muted. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you guys for being here and taking the time to answer their questions. So families, thank you for starting with some questions. Carla, I put in some links for you and for the other families on the call with some of the colleges that our students have been admitted to this year, and then some of the past acceptances. Really, really good question. And then in terms of your other question, how many students commute? Mel, do you want to talk about the ratios?
Sure. I mean, it's fluctuated a little bit over the years, but what we're looking for this upcoming school year is, a campus of probably close to 300 students and probably about 110 students being in residence. So, it will be about a 2-to-1 ratio with the day to the boarding, but maybe not quite that much. In years past, we've been more like 60% day, 40% boarding. So it depends on the year, but we can house typically around 140 to 150 residents. We've had to think about de-densifying a little bit, as we're calling it, for this upcoming school year with some of the COVID restrictions still in place. But we're still looking to have a pretty decent size residential community of students.
Families, what other questions do you have for administrators before our students hop on the link? Feel free, pepper us, we're ready. Melody, you must have done a really good job with your presentation.
I know, I'm thinking usually folks have questions at this point about like academic related stuff, content classes, or I don't know, anything about dress code, anything at all that you guys can think of that you want to ask? Oh.
If you'd rather not put your question in the chat, you're always welcome to unmute yourself and voice your question too. Either way is great.
John, do you want to take just a second to just talk about the I talked about it super quickly, but just a little bit of that like fluidity within the programs and how we're trying to like make sure that the kids get the right level of challenge where they excel, but still meeting them where they need the remediation, and what that means in terms of like movement throughout their high school time with us and the programs and stuff.
Sure. I think I know I've heard it before. I may have missed how you did explain that earlier.
Yeah.
But as Bob touched upon, no matter where a student is within any of the programs, that the diagnostic and prescriptive approach is an ongoing and daily reality. And so that when a student, our founders program tutorial is where most of our students, just I think statistically are receiving services. When a student is maybe no longer needing that same emphasis on literacy skills, and we're really looking at dialing in on executive function skills, we'd be kind of looking at either a partial or full-time shift to the preparatory program. And again, it's really just a case-by-case and individualized situation. So we look exactly at where the gaps remain, what challenges remain, and what a student's ready for. We want to really walk that line between providing the appropriate amount of support, but also providing the appropriate amount of challenge. Likewise, some students that are within our expressive language program, we're looking to make sure we are filling all of those gaps with regard to expressive language, but still within content classes like a science class or a social studies class, looking to push ahead and provide challenge within those areas as well at the same time that we're remediating the language. So as Mel said, it really is fluid, and it really depends on where those gaps remain. Remediation ongoing as students grow and gain confidence and gain skills. We look to make sure that we are challenging them on an ongoing basis, and so it can really kind of take on whatever shape and form that individual student's going to need academically.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. All right, lots of good questions rolling in. Jeff, do you want to address the question about weekends and what that, how many students are staying for the full weekend?
Yeah, sure. So you may have a sense of it already, but typically our weekdays are pretty structured, meaning that students who are living on campus would come out of classes and then very likely be engaged in after-school athletics, performing arts, or what we consider activities. And from there, we roll into dinner, free time, and then study hall within the houses. We call our dorms on campus houses. So weekends are a little bit different. If the students are engaged in a sport, they'd probably have athletics on Friday afternoon. And when that practice or that game ends, by the time they get to dinner on Friday night, ultimately the weekend is somewhat theirs to plan and to organize based on the events that we are hosting and promoting on campus. So for example, on a Friday night, very typically we would offer movie trips. Let's just assume we're through the pandemic and life has returned to normalcy. We'd offer movie trips to the nearby AMC movie theaters. We'd be taking students out to dinner. And if they take interest in things like mini golf, bowling, driving range, then that would be another pretty common Friday night trip. I can assure you we go to Chipotle at least 3 times a weekend. And perhaps that'll shift in the near future to something different, but we're often taking them to get food off campus. And that's probably to no great surprise. Saturday, sort of an extended version of the same thing. So students can sleep in. We have brunch on Saturday, not breakfast. So that really they're rising and creeping out of the dorms around 10:30 for an extended and really decent brunch in the cafeteria. And then by noon, we want them to be active again. So we've posted trips. We've solicited their ideas for how to get off campus and what they might want to do. That could be as far away, as getting down to Boston or up to shopping the outlets in Kittery, Maine, which is about an hour away. Certainly it could mean, again, getting back to the movies and going for more Chipotle. I mean, really, they tend to be creatures of habit, but we are often exploring Boston and really getting off campus in whichever fashion they'd like. Again, Saturday evening, there are more opportunities to get off campus. And really what we find is that we're pretty open to planning events with the students and trips with the students. And, you know, again, this won't surprise anybody. As long as they have a buddy or somebody else who signed up for that trip, or a teacher that they know who's taking the trip, they tend to get pretty excited about getting off campus in really any fashion. So we remain available to what that would look like and what they want to do. In the winter, we have ski club. So we'll head up to New Hampshire 5 times throughout the year, the type of thing where we leave at 6 in the morning and come back after dinner, and they're well fed along the way with Dunkin' Donuts in the morning, you know, burgers in the lodge at lunchtime. I'll stop repeating this, but yes, we do Chipotle on the way home too, because that's what they're asking for. And then Sundays are a little bit more low key. So again, they get to sleep in, and we often go to Target and to CVS and Staples on a Sunday afternoon, so students can refill their dorm fridge or get office or school supplies that they might need. If there are more specific questions, I'm happy to answer those too.
Thanks, Jeff. You make it sound like we're sponsored by Chipotle. No affiliation. That was a really great description. Thank you. I'll start introducing some of the students that are slowly starting to trickle in. First, Ethan, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Could you introduce yourself, your grade, how long you've been at Landmark, your plans for next year? You know the drill, Ethan.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Ethan. I'm a senior right now. I am going to go to George Washington University down in DC. I've been at Landmark this is my 4th year, so I started my freshman year. And I've been a resident from, well, freshman year till junior year. I would have been a resident this year, but COVID and all that, so I'm a day student this year.
And some of the things you've been involved in?
A lot of different things. I have been involved in everywhere from wrestling and sailing to debate and theater, chorus. I've done, in student government, intercultural club, stock club, multiple different organizations like that. I've been very involved with community service. I've gone on trips with the school. So if you have questions about clubs or after-school activities, I definitely have a few experience in those departments.
Thanks, Ethan. I'm glad you're here. Dominic, would you like to say good morning?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dick. I'm a senior, and this is my 5th year here at Landmark. I've been both a day student and a resident as well. I'm from Central Boston. And next year I'm going to Pratt Institute of Art for college. And I do cross country and track for after school activities.
Great. Thanks, Dominic. Glad you're here.
Yeah, no worries.
And then we have Kira.
Hi, I'm Kira. I'm from Needham, Massachusetts. I'm a junior. I kind of missed what we were supposed to say.
What do you do on campus?
Okay, I play in a more typical year. I do volleyball in the fall. I'm involved in student council, obviously a tour guide, and I'm involved in a club called Uncomfortable Conversations. And I think that's about it.
And you help at Talk Spot.
Oh, I do, yes. I'm in an early childhood education class the 2nd year, and so we go up to the on-campus school and like hang out with little kids and get to play with them and learn about their development.
Thanks for being here, guys. All right, families, what questions do we have for the students? They'll be really candid in sharing their experiences at Landmark. Let's see. Bill, why they start thinking about questions for the students, can you describe what we've done in the past for students who might be involved in sports that we don't offer, such as ice hockey or football? I see that thread going on.
Absolutely,
And in the
Katie.
meantime, families, please, more questions for students.
So I think as Melody mentioned, we do have most of the major sports, although not all, and I'll speak to that. And we have league affiliations on both the male and the female side, with the Eastern Independent League and the Independent Girls Conference, the IGC. And our hope is that all of our students, play for Landmark. We're very proud of our athletic teams. And we love to see our students compete literally with independent schools from all around New England. That being said, we don't, and my youngest son plays football, so, and that's the only sport he wants to play. We do not have football. We don't have ice hockey. We don't have softball or field hockey. Those are usually what I'll call the big four in terms of sports. So if a student is funded by their public school, there is what is called a Rule 52 waiver that I sign that enables them to play for their funding district if we don't have the sport. So that's essentially the apparatus involved. It's a very short waiver form, and it's an agreement between Landmark and the public school, and that enables our students. And usually in any year we might have 8 to 12 students who play for their public schools under the Rule 52 waiver, and then we work it out with those students and families in regards to if they need an early dismissal or something like that. We try to set up a schedule. So we want to support the fact that our students want to stay involved in a sport that they're passionate about, and so that's that's how we go about that.
Thanks, Bill. All right, families, what else would you like to know from the students? And also, I know there are some students on the call listening in, so if you'd like to hear from a peer, please ask them. I will say a common question that we get is, how did you feel about joining Landmark? Acknowledging you're not necessarily always excited about this transition. If anyone wants to speak to that.
Yeah, I can jump in. When I came to Landmark, so I came from Carroll before here. I don't know if there's anyone in this call coming from Carroll, but I went from Carroll to Landmark. I did not want to come to Landmark. I really was very much against coming in, came here kicking and screaming, hated, the idea of being on campus, didn't want to live on campus. It was very against that. And now I've about a month-ish came in, and then I absolutely loved it, because when in the residence program you get really close with your roommates and your other housemates in there, and you become like a second family in your own house. Then the community is really accepting, and a lot of people I knew from Carroll, and there was also a lot of new people coming from public schools or other schools across the country or even the world, and you really kind of just meld together. So after a while, Landmark has just been very accepting, and so long term, it's just fit right in, very natural. A lot of the people here have experienced very similar what I went through, and so it was very easy to make that transition. But I did not want to come here in the beginning. So if anyone has those feelings, I totally understand.
Thanks for your honesty, Ethan. Dominic or Kiara, anything you guys want to add?
Sure. I came from a different background as Ethan. I came from a kind of French-American middle school, because I used to live in France for 4 years. And I just found out that I was dyslexic at 6th to 7th grade. So I actually wanted to come to Landmark because I was just failing in school and classes. And as Ethan said, the whole living community just helped so much more. And also, every student and teacher here are just phenomenal and fantastic to work with.
I think the only thing would add is I came here a lot earlier than the other two. I came in 5th grade, and I did not want to come either. But I think what really helped convince me kind of that it was the best place to be was seeing my improvement, kind of whether it's test scores or just something instantly clicks, and I'm like, oh wow, that's a lot easier than it used to be. And it takes time, definitely, and it might take your kid time to adjust, but they'll realize this is like the best place they can be, and they wouldn't be where they are without being here.
Thank you guys so much for your honesty and thoughtful responses. Students, what do you think the families on the call should know about Landmark? So Ms. O'Neill just went through a really big comprehensive presentation, but from the student perspective, what do they need to know?
It's a small school. It's really small. It's like 300-ish kids. Everyone is going to know you. Every teacher, every student. Teachers are going to be on you to do your work, but as a good way. There are going to be a lot of support, a lot of help, and a lot of kind of breakthrough through your education system. They're going to try your best. They're going to try your best to help you throughout your years here. That's a big thing at Landmark.
One thing I would say, kind of going off Dominic, it is a smaller school, so there isn't really like, and I know some high schools, it's very like cliquey. You'll have like, oh, those people do that, or oh, those people do this. A lot of people do different things, and with like people living on campus or people doing, sports, and then for one season and then theater the next, or vice versa, it's very, ebbs and flows between students. So everyone is really kind of like, there isn't just one group of students that do this. It's kind of everyone is friends with different people and in different grades as well. And everyone here is kind of like, especially in your classes, they're kind of at the same level. There's definitely discrepancies, but everyone struggled with some sort of language-based disability or being in a school that wasn't a good environment. So everyone has that kind of same background and that same platform to stand on. And so that there is kind of like a camaraderie at Landmark of like, okay, we're here to get this work done, but we're also here as like kind of like a community and family.
I don't know. I don't think I have anything to add to that.
Guys, so thoughtful in your responses. Thank you so much. Students, I want to let you go to get to third period. Your morning break spent with these families, and I know it means a lot to them to hear from you directly. So thanks for taking the time, and we'll see you a bit later. Thank you, students. Get to third period, please.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you guys so much. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time
No worries.
always. You're always so great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
All right, so I think there's a couple questions that we might not have gotten to. We'll try to get to them briefly and then let you guys get on your way. We appreciate, again, you taking such a large chunk of time to explore Landmark with us. Brooke, to your question, we do have a number of students having a conversation, families with us about repeating a year, kind of thinking with COVID, a year being a wash. So that's certainly a conversation we can have with any families during the admissions process. Lots of good questions about hockey and football. Reach out to us directly and we can put you in touch with our athletic director and really work through those. We understand that that's an important consideration for your students. So we're happy to try to problem solve with you. I think we got them out to the rest of the questions. If you have any other questions, please throw them in the chat now and we'll get to them. Administrators, anything we missed? Okay. So I'll turn it back over to Melody to wrap up and talk about kind of next phase if you decide to move forward in the admissions process and what to expect.
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much again to the administrators, Bob and Bill and Jeff and John. Thank you guys so much for taking your time. We really appreciate it.
See you later.
So as I mentioned earlier on during the presentation, we work on a rolling basis. If you haven't yet started the application process with us, we encourage you to please get started quickly. We do still have and a few spaces for both the summer and the academic year remaining. But the sooner you can get us all of the materials, the better. Again, it's one application. You can download it right from the website. You want to save it to your desktop. It's not, yet, unfortunately, an online app. But it is a fillable app. So you want to download the application to your desktop. You can fill it in and then, send it as a PDF attachment back to admission@landmarkschool.org. And please know the information can come in piecemeal. You don't have to, look at the checklist of everything we need and have it all together and wait to send it all together. You can get the application pages done, send us copies of any testing that you have for your student, copies of any school reports you might have, get those teacher reference forms distributed. We will keep in touch. Our office keeps in touch with you through email as those documents trickle in to let you know what we have, what we're still waiting on. And then once it is complete, we tell you, okay, we now have everything, it's complete. At that point, we start our review process, which can take about a month. We're trying to work through as quickly as we can, but just know that we have to have a completed application first before we start our review. At that point, when we finish up with the review, if we feel like we're likely to be a good fit, we'll reach out. We'll reach out regardless, but we would reach out if we thought we were a good fit and schedule a virtual screening and interview appointment. That's the last step of the process. Please know that if we're scheduling that, we're feeling pretty likely that we are going to be a good fit. If there are any concerns, we'll let you know about that. And if for any reason we don't end up being the right fit, we always try to talk to you about some other possible, programs that might be better and more appropriate if it's not Landmark. So again, just know we work on a rolling basis. Look at, get going with the application as soon as possible. One application for summer and or fall. Look at the checklist of everything we need and know our office will keep in touch with you and you can reach out with any questions at any time. And thank you so much for joining us today.